Hi, it's Leanne Poston, and today we're going to do step 3 in comparing D2L and Canvas. And the 5 things that we're going to compare this week are changing gradebook settings and creating gradebook categories, creating Dropbox assignments using Turnitin.com and creating a gradebook rubric, creating quiz questions in a question library, and creating electronic grades for quizzes. And finally, we'll perform a quality check as a demo student to make sure we did everything correctly. So the first thing we want to do is set up our gradebook, and you'll click on grades to do that. And after you click on grades, you're going to go over here to settings, and you'll see that there are 3 tabs. The first one we're going to take a look at is the personal display option, which is this one right here. And the things that you want to make sure you check are points grades, the grade scheme symbol, and the grade scheme color. And then as you move down, we also want to repeat the calculated final grade at the start and at the end of the user list so that as our gradebook gets really large, it's easy to see. And we're going to set our default to manage grades so that way every time it comes up, that's the first option that we'll get. All right, the next thing is the organizational unit display options. And you only have to set this up for each computer that you're going to be using this on. But you'll want to check all 3 things here: points grades, grade scheme symbol, and grade scheme color. And then finally, we're going to move over to calculation options. And here we want to click on points because we're going to be grading with points. And we want to calculate the final grade and drop our ungraded items so that they aren't zeros in the gradebook, and then automatically keep our final grades updated. When you have done all of these, then you're going to go ahead and click Save and be done. So go ahead and do that, and it's verifying that we want to submit our changes. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to click on Grades again. And this time, instead of going over to Settings, we're going to go to Manage Grades. And anytime that you want to set up the gradebook here, you're going to have to do 2 things. You're going to set up the categories first and then the items. And you can see I have week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and week 5 as far as categories. And then I have week 1 Dropbox and quizzes in each one of those. So you click this and get your down arrow. You start off with the category first. So as I click that, you can see that I can name my category, and one suggested strategy for this is to do all capital letters, so you can easily tell the difference between the category and the item. And then after you make your category, really all you have to do is save and close. All right, and then we're going to go back up to the top and take a look at what the item looks like. So we'll cancel this one and go back up here and choose item this time. And we're going to choose the grade item types, such as numeric, pass, fail, formula, or calculated. I'm going to go ahead and choose numeric for this one. And then after you do that, it's going to give you the option to name your grade item right here. Decide what category you put it under, and if you remember, I put all the categories under the weeks, so I can choose which week I want that to be under. And then we can select our point value for it. So in this case, it was 10 points. And then you can choose whether you want to stay with percentage or organizational letter grade, but I'm going to stay with percentage. And notice that we have the option of adding rubrics here, which we'll talk about, and then save and close. So now you've set up your gradebook with both the categories and the items. So the next task we had was to set up a Dropbox assignment. And when we set up our Dropbox assignment, we want to use Turnitin.com because that will allow student documents to be checked for originality as well as spelling and grammar right away. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a Dropbox, and in order to do that, I'm going to click on an assessment and then click on Dropbox. And once I do that, you can see that I can click New Folder in order to set up our new folder. I'm going to name my folder, And then you can see that I can enable turnitin.com with this clicking the originality check here. And then I can select the category or week that I want to put this new Dropbox folder in. So I can put it in week 2 or week 3 or whatever. And then I can decide how many points it's going to be worth. I can again add a rubric to it if I want to, and then hit save and close. All right, our next assignment for this was to set up grading rubrics. So I'll go to assessment and I'll hit rubrics. If for some reason you notice that rubrics isn't here, then you have to go back to course admin and click on rubrics and make sure there's a green check next to it, and then come back to assessment and rubrics should be available. So I'm going to click on rubrics. Okay, after I've clicked on rubrics, I'm going to hit new rubric in order to show you the parts of it, and then we'll go and look at a completed rubric. So after I have my new rubric come up, the first thing I'm going to do is name it. Now your rubric status, you can have it draft while you're working on it, but you're not going to be able to assign it to any of the assignments or to the Dropbox until you publish it. You can put a description here of your rubric, and then you get to make a choice between holistic and analytic. Holistic would only give you one criteria. You can have multiple levels of achievement in it, but only one criteria. On the other hand, analytics will let you select the number of levels as well as the number of criteria, and then decide how you're going to score that. All right, so now that you've seen what parts there are to it, and after you choose this and save, then a grid will come up that will allow you to add your categories to it and your levels. So I'm going to bring up a completed one so you can take a look at it. All right, for my rubric, I hit preview so that we can take a look at one that I have already completed. And here you can see that I was able to assign criteria. In that grid that I was talking about earlier, you just type in the names of your criteria, and then you can go ahead and type in the names of your levels. And you can assign them a certain number of points, and then that way your student will get an overall score. So the final step after you put everything in is to apply the rubric to the correct assignment in the gradebook. And remember, when we were doing the quiz or the Dropbox, there was that rubric button that you could select. Once you select that, any published rubrics will show up, and you just click on and choose the one that you want. All right, the next thing that we need to do is develop a quiz question library. So what we're going to do for that is go to Assessments, and then to Quizzes and Exams. And the one we want to select here is Question Library. This is the one that we'll use for developing our library. You can see that there's already quizzes that have been developed here. But if we make all the questions and put them in the question library first, then those questions can be reused for any assessment instead of assigned to a single assessment. So after we open the question library, what we'll do is click right here with new, and that's going to give you the option of all of these different types of questions. So you can choose the type of question you want, then you'll write the question, input the question title, the number of points it's valued at. I'll click on multiple choice so you can get a look at it. The difficulty level, the text for the question, and the answer for the question. You also have the option of importing images and randomizing the answers. Now, if you've already got a question library set up in another learning management system, it's easy to export and import them also. So here's the title of our question, determine how many points and what its difficulty level is. Then I would type out the text for the question. You have the option of inserting an image and then describing the image. You can decide whether you want to use an ABC format or 1, 2, 3 format, whether you want the answers to be vertical or horizontal, whether you want to randomize them, and then you're going to click in and type in the different answers. Now, the one question sometimes people have is, what is this weighting option? And whatever the correct answer is, you're going to weight that as 100%. All of the wrong answers, you're going to weight as 0. If there's more than one answer and you want to divide the points equally between two answers, you can do 50-50 for each one. All right, we're going to go back to Quizzes and Exams so that you can see a completed quiz. When you create a quiz, you want to be careful so you make sure that you use the same name for the quiz as the one that you have already put in the gradebook. And you're going to be given the option of adding the questions one at a time to that particular quiz, or you can import the quiz questions from your question library. So here we have a quiz that's already set up, and you can see to import the questions, all you do is click on Import Questions from an Existing Library. Here you can see we have our questions here. You select the source of the import as the question library, and then you choose the collection route to have access to all of the questions. So if I was going to do that, then what I could do is click on that and bring in some more questions. And I would start by editing the questions, and that's where I would get the option. And notice that I was able to assign different points and difficulty levels, as well as use multiple different kinds of questions for my quiz. And there's import in order to get them from the question library. All right, so now the quiz has been created and questions have been added. The next thing we have to do is set restrictions for the quiz. So we're going to click on assessment again and back to quizzes and exams. And the default that we had set before, manage quizzes screen, will come up. You click on the quiz that you're currently working on to manage the setting and the restrictions, and notice that there's going to be 6 tabs at the top of the screen. The properties one we've already taken care of because we did that when we were writing the quiz. So on the restriction tab, what we want to do there is set it to active. We also want to set our availability dates. We want to determine whether we want to use a lockdown browser or not. With a lockdown browser, when they're taking the quiz, they're not able to open any other tabs. And we want to set any restriction parameters. And the good thing as far as not being able to open any other tabs is they can't do screenshots of the quiz questions and share them with other students that possibly haven't taken the quiz yet. All right, the next step is to click on the Assessment tab. And now that we're in the Assessment tab, we want it to be automatically graded so that they get a grade as soon as they finish it. Notice that this is the one that we are grading, Week 1 quiz. We also want the automatic export to the gradebook so that that way our grades will show up immediately. We want to get a look at what the student view is going to look like. And in this case, you can see it's going to show the percent total, which is 100%. Here I have the option of adding a rubric. And you can see that I had already developed this analytic rubric, and I can add that so that that way the students will know how their quiz was graded. We have the option of setting however many attempts we want to allow, and then how we're going to grade it. Are we going to average all the attempts, the highest, the lowest, the first, or the last? All right, and then the next thing that we want to do is preview our quiz. So I'm going to save and close this, and I'm going to click on the down arrow next to the quiz, and I can bring up preview. And that way I can take a look at what the quiz is going to look like and make sure that I didn't make any mistakes and that it had the value that I wanted it to have. And I can even start the quiz to see what it looks like there. All right, the last thing we need to do is perform our quality check to make sure that we set everything up correctly. So if you'll recall from last week, we go to class list, and then we're going to go down to our demo student, and we're going to select impersonate for our demo student. All right, now we are demoing as a student, so we can go to assessment. We can click on the Dropbox to verify that the Dropbox assignment is there. We can open it, take a look at it, make sure it looks like what it's supposed to. And then we can also click on assessment to where the quiz is, and we can actually see what the quiz is going to look like to the student to make sure that it is the way that we want it to be. So you can see that it's set it at a limited attempts. I've already done it twice as a student. As you can see, D2L is fairly intuitive. It has a nice appearance. Everything's set up pretty well. It does take a little bit of training in order to understand where everything is. And if you make a mistake by not setting up your categories for your drop boxes, or not setting up your quizzes quite right, then you may not get the results that you want.